Today we will just discuss to get the mission of the institutions back to Athens. And that requires agreement on substantial reforms and additional measures to be taken. The mission will then go down to Athens, sort all of that out, and by the time they come back, we will look at the whole package, including debt, but it won't be on the agenda today.
So that suggests no conclusion on the Greek bailout today. Is there a sense of urgency here to get a conclusion, though, before the March 15th elections in your own country?
No, it's completely independent of elections. There's always an election somewhere in Europe, so we simply have to keep moving ahead. We've had a lot of talks in the last couple of weeks, so I see progress. I'm going to find out today whether that progress is enough for the mission to return to Athens, and then I think more work will have to be done. But it's a good step, it's a positive step. So let's wait for the outcome of the Eurogroup.
Do you think the lingering Greek debt issue, though, has concerned voters in your country? When you look at your party in the opinion polls, do you think the fact that you are such a symbolic image tied to the Greek problem, is that a concern when you look at your polls?
Not really. A lot of the electorate in the Netherlands supports my serious approach to this issue. So I will continue to follow up on it in a very serious way. And I think it's in our joint interests for the Greeks, the whole Eurozone and the Netherlands that we have a stable recovery in Greece. And that's what we're doing. And anyone who wants to talk about crisis can talk to someone else because the Greek economy is gradually recovering. And what we need to do is to strengthen that and to give that more opportunity. And that's what I'm trying to do.
You've spoken out before that you were somewhat frustrated with the IMF's own economic assessments about Greece. Do you think the rest of the creditors in the IMF are moving closer here, closing the gap on perceptions of Greece? I guess if you can give us a better idea of what it will take to get the IMF on board.
Well, the IMF has been clear right from the beginning that for them to formally become a part of the program again, they would need serious reforms in the tax system, the pension system, the labor market, and a sustainable debt outlook. As you know, we've taken a number of debt relief measures. The last ones were only last January, another package of debt relief, and we will come back to that at the end of the program. So at the moment, we need to concentrate on these deep reforms that the IMF quite rightly asks of the Greek government.
And what happens if the Greek government proves resistant to pass those additional reforms?
I'm not going to speculate. Let's wait for today's meeting. Bye.
So
we've had intense talks with the institutions and the Greek government in order to clear the ground for the mission to return to Athens. And in the Eurogroup, we will discuss whether we've come to that point, because that is my goal, to get the mission back in Athens on the ground to talk about all the difficult stuff that still needs to be sorted out. We've covered a lot of ground, so we'll see in the Eurogroup if we've done enough.
And you're positive that the IMF is also on board and the mission will be concluded in time for parliamentary procedures, because that's also an issue.
That's a lot of questions at the same time. So the position of the IMF is unchanged. They are very willing to participate in the program, are in principle prepared to go to the board, but their demand is and always has been that it is a serious program with in-depth reforms and sustainable debt. So all of that needs to be sorted out before we can bring them on board, definitely. That is my target. I'm not doing this exercise to take another step as Europeans without the IMF. The next step will have to be with the IMF.
Is there a time?
Yes, is there a deadline?
Not really. The liquidity issues, as you know, are not substantial and they won't occur until the summer. So in other words, there's no acute need for money. Economically, of course, it's important that the stability which we have achieved in Greece and the recovery economically continues. And therefore, it would be useful if it all happens quite quickly.
So you don't see
simply for stability reasons and confidence reasons.
So you don't see any implication from parliamentary procedures, because you have elections and the French have elections as well.
Yeah.
They need to approve, I suppose, the deal afterwards.
Well, there's always an election somewhere in Europe, so it doesn't stop me, it doesn't speed me up. I want to do it as quickly as possible, but it still takes, I mean, we're talking about complex reforms. I mean, I know from experience in the Netherlands, if you try to do a tax reform and a pension reform and labor market reforms, and you have to do all of these at the same time, that's hard work. So let's be realistic. As soon as we get the mission back to Athens, and that's my first goal, then there's still a lot of work to be done.